Hey, why don't we go ahead and get started? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Grant Writing Expert. I'm Dr. Meg Bouvier. You know me as the creator of your library of NIH grantsmanship courses. I have almost 40 years of experience at NIH as an applicant, an intramural researcher, a staff writer, and now as a full-time NIH grant mentor. And I've helped clients land over $500 million in federal funding. I'm here to answer your NIH grant writing questions, and I'm sure everybody has a ton of them because so many things are in flux right now. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. So if you're attending live, and we've got a pretty healthy group of people here today, just a reminder that you're in listen only mode, but you can go ahead and start putting your questions in the Q&A box. I think somebody's already got one in there. Go right ahead and start typing your questions in there. And I will proceed to answer them. If you're watching, this is a recording, just a reminder that it's May 28th, 2025, and everything I say today is true to the best of my knowledge, but things are changing even more quickly than usual at NIH right now. So I would encourage you to just double check everything before you take it as gospel. So what you should be viewing in the library right now, well, hopefully if you're submitting for the June 5th deadline, you're not watching courses, you're finalizing your package. Maybe if you're working on a resubmission for a deadline in July, you might be finishing up watching courses and finalizing your draft to send out to colleagues and mentors for comment. But I would imagine that many of you are actually starting your process for the fall deadlines. I know that once I emerge from editing the cycle 2 applications, I'll start meeting with my applicants for the fall deadline. So I'm a big believer in getting started very early. So in terms of NIH updates, there are two things that I wanted to update people on, and I'm actually just going to put some notices in the chat. So the first one has to do with expirations to NOFOs that were released kind of at the last minute. So this is for notice, NOT, notice from the Office of the Director, OD 25-113. And I am going to screen share so that you can see it. Let's see, that's the wrong one. That's the right one. Okay, so you guys should be able to see this notice OD 25-113. So hopefully people are seeing that. Basically, this came out on May 15th, so this is very recent, less than 2 weeks ago, and it has to do with early expiration of NOFOs related to the simplified review framework. So basically, these are NOFOs where the instructions do not yet account for the simplified review framework. So they've expired these NOFOs, and one would think that they are going to reissue them with the new simplified review framework information in the scoring criteria section of the NOFO, but it remains to be seen if that is the case. So this came to my attention. We were aware of this, but I had not taken a close look at this list until this morning when a client of mine said, hey, we just submitted our CATS application and got an error message because the CATS deadline is today, May 28th. It was the NOFO was closed on 13 days notice. So these poor applicants for the May CATS were working toward this deadline and didn't think to look to see if the thing was being expired early, because why would you? And went to upload early and ran into this, got an error message because the NOFO is no longer active. So it's hard to know what this means. Again, ostensibly, the reason stated is that it does not include, they have not included the simplified review framework. So one could imagine a scenario where, because of all the chaos at NIH right now, this was just an administrative snafu where these NOFOs were not reissued with the new scoring criteria framework in them. And one would imagine, for example, that was true for the CATS, and it's really unfortunate because now we're missing an entire cycle for the CATS applicants because they you can't submit for the cats for May 28th. I would imagine that what one has to do is now submit for the September deadline. And ostensibly, NIH will have issued the CATS NOFO with the new scoring criteria by then. In a more cynical scenario, one could imagine that NIH or the administration, more to the point, is using this as an excuse to sunset some of the more problematic NOFOs, in their opinion. And looking at the list, I could see an argument for each because some of these are, things that might be problematic. For example, this one is problematic for the administration community level interventions to improve minority health and reduce health disparities. It's hard to imagine that they're going to reissue that. But on the other hand, why would they not reissue the CATs? So it may be a combination of both of those things. But anyway, just be aware that this list is out there. I've put a URL in the chat for that, but you could simply search for NOT OD 25113. And just in case there are any people out there who don't know what this string of letters and numbers means, NOT is simply a notice that comes out of, in this case, the Office of the Director in FY25, and it's the 113th notice to come out of the Office of the Director in FY25. This is useful to know because this number in particular, when you're looking at anything like a PA, RFA, PAR, if this number is really low, like 14, the thing expired a long time ago. So, and nothing is ever taken down from the NIH website, or hadn't been in the past, shall we say. Lots of old NOFOs are lurking out in the stratosphere. So always make sure you're dealing with something fairly current. This is the FY25, so you know that's current. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that and then talk about the second thing that I wanted to share with you. And again, let me just copy the URL and put it in the chat. And this has to do with ESIs. So ESI extensions. So oh, and you know what? I think the other one I sent to just the host and the panelists. So let me just redo that. ESI extensions is that one, and I will send it to everyone. Okay, that's the ESI extension one, and let me repost the expired NOFO notice. Expired NOFO notice. Okay, so both of those are now in the chat, and everybody should be able to see them. So let me share this second notice. Okay, all right, so you guys should be able to see this now. So this is having to do with extensions to ESI pertaining to the chaos that was occurring this past spring. So this is, again, the URL is in the chat, but you could just do, for those of you watching a recording of this who don't have access to the chat, just look up, do an internet search on NOTOD 25114. So I don't know if you can, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here. Maybe that's a little easier to read. There we go. So here's the salient point here. So if your ESI expiration is occurring around this time and is being impacted by the chaos that occurred last spring when NIH, when you couldn't really get anything reviewed at NIH, here are the new rules. And somebody had asked me about this at a past AGE, I think, like what should I ask for an extension to ESI pertaining to the chaos at NIH this spring? And my answer to them was no. NIH is going to have to come up with a policy for all of the people who were in that situation. And sure enough, here it is. So investigators whose last submission date for a new resubmission application based on ESI eligibility was October-November 2024 will be granted a 3-receipt cycle extension, roughly 12 additional months, so that the last submission as an ESI will be October 2025. Okay. And again, just a reminder to people, and NIH has this quirky little rule that if you put in, let's say you were in this scenario, this first bullet, and your ESI status expires let's say your ESI status expires on October 1st. If you upload before October 1st and October 5th R01, it will be reviewed as ESI. So if you just upload when you have ESI within reason, like within a week or two of a deadline, it will be reviewed as ESI. Another quirky little rule is that if that application is not funded and you want to submit a resubmission in A1, as long as you submit it within 13 months of your deadline, that October deadline, that too will be reviewed as an ESI application. And anybody who's watched any of my trainings at all will know that I'm pretty passionate about trying to get your R01 applications reviewed as an ESI if your institute offers a funding advantage for ESIs, and most of them do. So just something to think about. And then individuals whose last submission date for a new resubmission application based on ESI eligibility for February, March 2025, so the cycle after, will be granted a 2-receipt cycle extension, roughly 8 additional months. So your last ESI cycle would be October. And then those whose submission date for a new resubmission application based on ESI eligibility would be June/July, will get roughly a 1-receipt cycle extension, so 4 additional months. So again, until October 2025. So I would imagine that this also, because of the way they're wording this pertaining to the resubmissions, let's say your ESI status expired a while ago and you were exploiting this rule about, oh, well, my A0 wasn't funded and then my ESI expired, but I'm putting in my A1 within 13 months. So that too should be an ESI review, even though my ESI status expired. If that A1 ESI application got caught up in all the chaos of the spring, that also is going to be subject to extensions. So hopefully this will help some people and answer some questions for some folks out there. I know this is a question I've gotten quite a bit. And speaking of questions I've gotten quite a bit, I am getting so many questions about rebuttals. And I promise you that is coming up. I actually was able to jig that in, let's see, June 11th, we have Emily Clemens from CDMRP coming to speak to us about their portfolio at the moment and what those applications are looking like. But on June 25th, I'm going to talk about rebuttals. How and why do I write one? So, and if you're wondering what a rebuttal is, it's basically you're near the funding line, somewhere near the funding line, and your program officer, after the first review and before the second review at council, has requested you to provide a 1 or 2-page document that is a response to the reviewers in some form or another. There's no template for this. I made one up years ago. And all of a sudden, like, there's been an avalanche of requests from program officers for this kind of a document. And I feel like I've worked on at least a dozen of those in the last couple of weeks. So I figured it was probably time for me to just talk about what they were, since this seems to be in the air at the moment. So okay, wow, and attendance really has gone up since I've been gabbing away. So I'm going to start answering questions that are typed in here. Feel free to keep putting them in. Let's see. How much should I worry about removing any words on the various banned words list for NIH grants? Is there a list that I should use? Many different versions on the internet. Does the NIH actually screen documents for these words? If so, which documents get screened? Some banned words are easier to deal with, but some really are not. Yep, that's true. Specifically, what can I use instead of the words bias, evidence-based, and identify? How do I add sex as a biological variable instead of saying the word sex? So, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. NIH has not issued a list of banned words. Full stop. So this list of banned words that is being sent around, and there are different lists, but the one that is sent around most often, and I might as well just because you're going to ask for this too. I'll send a link of the first comprehensive list that I saw come out was on March 7th in the New York Times. And I'm going to put a link to that. New York Times list of so-called banned words. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. But that list, like all lists, is not an official list that has come out of NIH. That is a list that a group of reporters put together from a variety of sources, both official and not official. Some of them are, and from different agencies. They're not all NIH. They're from many different agencies, and some of them were from like leaked memos or emails that were taken out of context. So, I don't think I always urge caution in applying this so-called list of banned words. So you want to be a little bit sensible about it. I mean, obviously, DEI research is directly in the crosshairs of the current administration, but sex as a biological variable is still part of the scientific rigor scoring criteria and very much part of NIH review. And I would argue that one needs to use these lists a little sensibly. It is to my knowledge, it is not known whether there is some sort of how did you put it? Does NIH actually screen documents for these words? Well, NIH hasn't even issued a list, so it's not really clear whether they're screening for these words. My advice to applicants has been to try your best to avoid what sound realistically like trigger words like DEI or, anything that, has like minority or, things that are directly in the crosshairs for the current administration. Try not to put those in high profile sections of the application. For example, the title, the aims page, the project summary, the 30-line project summary, and the 3-sentence project narrative. I don't know if NIH were to screen these documents. I think they're a lot less likely to be doing it on things like the human subjects form. But I can't say that for sure. That's just kind of a guess. And of course, like if you're doing looking at some sort of like molecular mechanism and working in a rodent model and you're using equal number of male and female mice, that isn't in the crosshairs of the current administration. They're not going to, this isn't really something that they're going to be directly targeting. You have to use a little common sense about how to deal with these things. And other than that, it's all just kind of guesswork, right? We're not going to know until we start getting summary statements back for applications that have been reviewed since all of this started. And information about funding since all of this started, and we're not there yet. Like we just don't have that information yet. So anyway, that was a long ramble, and I hope that answered your question. I don't think it's problematic to use a phrase like evidence-based. In fact, there's a lot of language coming out of this administration indicating that they're all about cost effectiveness and efficacy. So I don't think it's problematic to use something like evidence-based. So, okay, my R03 submission was scored and will be discussed soon. The PO asked me to prepare a response to reviewers. Here is that rebuttal page, right? How should I address reviewer comments about the lack of racial ethnic diversity in the sample population or insufficient plans to include participants from underrepresented backgrounds? Well, I guess my question is, why is there a lack of diversity, and why is there an insufficient plans to include participants from underrepresented backgrounds? Let me know, and I'll answer the question, but I could probably make an educated guess if it's an R03, and it's probably a lack of budget, right? Because a typical R03 is 2 years, capped at 200,000 directs. And there's just a limit to what you can do. If you're dealing with actual human subjects, there's just a limit to what you can do with $200,000. So my guess is that that is the reason. So if that is the reason, then I would say that you're looking for that the usually the kind of wording that I use in a situation like that is to say something like to power a sub-study that gives significant results on those parameters is beyond the scope and the budget of the current project. However, we are going to be looking for trends in the data to inform the design of a future R01 project. So let me just see if that person, no, that person didn't confirm that my suspicion is correct, but I'm pretty sure it's probably a budget issue, right? And here's another case of being asked for. They're sometimes called a rebuttal, sometimes they're called a response to reviewers, which shouldn't be confused with the formal one-page introduction that you include with your A1, your resubmission. This is something that actually is. I mean, I'm going to talk about it in late June, but because you're writing it, I'm just going to really quickly talk about it. These are talking points for the program officer. You're providing talking points for the program officer to walk into an advisory council meeting and pitch your project for funding. So your goal is to, I usually, put the stuff at the top, like the name of the PIs, the organization, the grant number, the NOFO, the study section, the title, things like that. And then I usually do a really brief summary, maybe 3 sentences that kind of just reminds the reviewer, the program officer, what it is. And then on the first page, I recap the strengths. Usually it's 2 pages. Sometimes it's 1. Occasionally it's 3, usually 2. So on the first page, I bullet point the strengths, justifying to the left so that you can get lots of space. Don't use the auto indent on Word. And really strike on the key points, particularly as they pertain to institute objectives, because the audience is the institute at that point, not the study section. It's the council members who are going to vote in a closed session on the actual award of money or not. And then on the second page, I would briefly touch on some of the key high-level critiques and what your response is to them. And remember that formatting is crucial because it's the audience is only going to hear the program officer speak about these things, and the only one who's going to see the document typically is the program officer. So these are serving as talking points for that person. So make it really easy for that person to skim. So Julia, I hope I got it right about your R03 and how to answer that question. If I didn't, let me know. And I hope that for you and for others who are writing a rebuttal, I hope that gives you a kind of a quick overview. At the end of June, at that AGE session, I'll show you guys templates and such in a mini tutorial. Okay, so if I never requested ESI extensions for COVID-19, do you think I can still request that type of extension? If your ESI has not expired, I think the rule is that you can still request it. And I have some, and I could be wrong about this, but I have some recollection that if your ESI expires before you ask for the extension, I'm not sure you can ask for it, but double check that with your program officer. So NIH is still granting extensions to ESI based on COVID-related research interruptions. It is the single biggest reason NIH is issuing ESI extensions at the moment. It used to be the 1-year extensions given to researchers who give birth. You get an automatic 1-year extension per child if you birth them. Once the pandemic hit, then the most frequent extensions were going to people requesting ESI extensions because of COVID-related research interruptions. And my guess is there's going to be a huge uptick in people. Actually, I don't think you have to request the extension for that I think it's automatic, the extensions because of all the chaos in the spring. Okay, sorry, I totally missed the initial 10 minutes. We just found out that our NOFO expired early, announced on May 15th. There is a notice saying they might consider application on a case-by-case basis. Do you have suggestions for us on how to proceed? So NOFO 22243. So let me just see if I can see which one that is. because we did talk about this. So 22, 243. I'm not in this voluminous list. I'm not immediate. Oh, here it is. Oh, oh. And this is somebody I've been working with too. Yeah, I would reach out, Krishna, I would reach out to the program officer. And my apologies because I did not realize that yours was on the list. This has kind of been a kind of a crazy situation. We did talk about this at the very beginning, just briefly to say there are a whole bunch of NOFOs that were expired early. The notice came out on the 15th. Because the NOFOs did not include the updated scoring criteria. And my suspicion that in some instances, this is going to be an excuse to retire some NOFOs that are not consistent with the values of the current administration. Yours, however, is a bioengineering research grant of the BRG R01 for those who are familiar with this. And that should absolutely be reissued. There's no reason why the current administration won't reissue that one. So I would reach out to the program officer and ask them if, let me just look and see, your expiration is, it's June 5th. So you have a little bit of time. And I would email the program officer and ask if it's going to be reissued and indicate the time sensitivity in the subject line. If it is not going to be reissued, if they're not going to allow you to submit it as a BRG, my strong recommendation is that you put it in as into the parent R01, which is active. All of those have the new scoring criteria, and remove the language we inserted on the Ames page about saying we submit this in response to the BRG R01. So that's my recommendation. And I'm working with you one-on-one, so if you have more questions about that, email me directly, and we can talk about that offline. But I'm sure that's going to pertain to some people here too, so thank you for raising that. Does NIH consider ESI for R21 or R03? No. ESI has nothing whatsoever to do with R21 or R03. You don't get an ESI funding advantage, nor will you lose your ESI funding advantage if you're a PI on an R21 or R03. It only has to do with R01 or equivalent. So it is a funding advantage that most institutes give on an R01. ESI is, you've never been a PI on an R01 or equivalent and you're 10 years or less from your terminal degree or your last clinical training. And it only applies to R01 or equivalent. So, there's no advantage or penalty whatsoever for R21 and R03. We submitted an NIH R21 on February 15th. The ERA note said it is under review. Is there any nominal waiting time for review before the next cycle starts? So we think for a resubmission. Thanks. You can't really think about a resubmission until you get the score from the first level of review. So if it's under review, it sounds to me like it hasn't gone to the study section yet. So the absolute earliest you can start to, and let me just see if that person answered the question now. The absolute earliest you can start to think about a resubmission would be if you find out that it wasn't discussed at the study section, it's just not discussed, it was triaged, then you can start to think about a resubmission. If it is discussed if it's in the top half and it is discussed at the study section, and you're way outside of the funding range, because the score is posted a couple of weeks before the full summary statement is posted. So if your score is like way outside of the range, so on an R21, this would be like in the 30s. It's like, not percentile, but score. Then you could start to think about a resubmission. But you definitely want to wait until the summary statement is issued so that you can see especially if you're going for a resubmission to the same study section, so that you can see what their complaints were and you can speak to those directly. So, yeah, so I hope that answers that question. What is the shortest in years awarded R01 you've seen? I just wrote a mammoth 5-year R01. My first senior mentor wanted me to write short ones, 2-3 years. Great. But how short can I go and still call it an R01? Not 2 years. I don't think I've ever seen a 2-year R01. Occasionally, I see a 3-year R01. I think it's not uncommon for people to write a 4-year R01 right now. And I have heard this. Some mentors strongly suggest that their mentees write a shorter R01 for their first one, so that it's not as the idea being that the hurdle's a little lower to clear. And some mentors don't agree that that is an issue at all. So take that for what it's worth. 2 years, no, for sure. I don't think I've ever in my life seen a 2-year R01. If anybody has, let me know. But occasionally, I used to see 3-year R01s years ago. They used to call them mini R01s, just colloquially. People would refer to them as mini R01s. And that occurred when the funding lines plummeted on the R21. It used to be a number of years ago that an R21 was much harder to land than an R01. And so in order to get around that, people were writing 3-year, what people referred to as mini R01s. And that kind of backfired because what wound up happening is a lot of institutes pulled out of the parent R21 because they wanted to exert more control over the types of applications that were coming in and the funding lines and the intent of it. Since that time, I mean, it's been a while since I've seen a 3-year R01. They're usually nowadays, especially, they're 4 or 5 years more typically. And for a first-time R01 applicant, it's not uncommon to see a 4-year R01 for whatever that's worth. Okay, let's see. Apologies, I joined a bit late and may have missed this in your discussion of the expired NOFOs. Everybody's interested in these expired NOFOs. And yes, we did discuss them, but let's see what your question is. I have a PI who had been planning to submit a resubmission to an R34 RFA with a June 2nd deadline. That RFA is on the list in the NOT you shared. It expired on May 24th. The notice makes it sound like these were expired because of the review framework. So can we expect the RFA to be reissued with the new review framework, or should we interpret this to mean the RFA won't be reissued because this was just a way for them to expire a bunch of NOFOs in one fell swoop? Yeah, so that is exactly what I said in the beginning. Here's a giant list of NOFOs where they hadn't updated the scoring criteria. We don't know if they're going to be reissued. I would imagine that some of them are. The parent announcement for cats is on there, for example. Like, what possible reason could the current administration have for not wanting to renew that? And another applicant just recently brought up the BRG, the biomedical engineering R01. There's no compelling reason that would not be reissued. And yet there are some on the list where you have to think this was kind of an excuse to just yank the NOFO because the intent of the NOFO is not consistent with the values of the current administration. So I think it's probably a mix of both. I don't know which R34 RFA you were targeting, but if it's like kind of a general planning grant for a clinical trial that doesn't specifically have language pertaining to like DEI in it, then hopefully it will be reissued. And I would reach out to the PO ASAP to ask what to do, because the R34 at the moment doesn't have, or the last time I looked, there is no parent R34 anymore at NIH. There used to be a couple of years ago, but then they kind of were broken up among the institutes. So I don't know if there's a way that you can quickly retool and get it into an existing R34, or if you have to sit out a cycle, or even think about shortening it and putting it in for an R21. Or something else. If there's another open NOFO for cycle 2 with a June deadline that has a clinical trial planning element to it. But I would reach out to the program officer ASAP and indicate the time urgency in the subject line of the email. Are you still able to get the 1-year extension for childbirth, or was that removed given current administration? No, that's, as far as I know, I have not seen any language saying that that is not a thing. So again, ESI extensions and the NIH policy is that all you have to do is ask if you birthed a child, you get an automatic 1-year extension. Which isn't to say if you parented a child you did not birth, and particularly if you used FMLA, for example, you can put in for an extension based on that. It's just not automatic. It needs to be reviewed. But I've seen parents successfully apply for ESI extensions, even for kids that they parented but didn't birth. So yeah, as far as I know, that's still a thing. Um, oh, okay. This person is telling me the NOFO that is the R34 that is in question. So let me see if I can just quickly open that one and see what we're dealing with here. Just because I'm curious, I won't take a lot of time for this, I promise. It's not letting me paste. So let me go back to the 25-136. Yeah, I'm going to have to look at this. I'm going to ask Liz to email me separately about this. And let me see if I can think through what you should do about that R34 that was expired. So just email me, meg@bouviergrant.com with that RFA, and I'll take a look at that. And because I don't want to take a lot of time here to figure this out because this is specific to you. So just email me and I'll see what I can come up with. Being a PI on an R21 or R03 will lose my ESI eligibility for future R01 application? No. So somebody just asked this question, but you may have logged in since then. ESI, again, is a funding advantage that's offered only on the R01, and you don't get a funding advantage on the small format Rs, nor will you lose your ESI status if you're a PI on an R03 or an R21. So ESI has nothing to do with R21, R03, R34, nothing. There's no funding advantage, and you don't lose your ESI status if you land one of those. Okay, let's see. Okay, and that other person who was saying, when can we write our resubmission for this the small format R, said yes, it went to study section. So I would wait until you get the score from the study section, because if it's nowhere near the funding line, you can start to work on your resubmission even before they issue the summary statement. But if it's near the funding line, I would wait. Let's see. Oh my gosh, I made it to the bottom of the list of questions and it's only 3:40. Okay, we did extend the time on this because I was routinely running over. So I think now we schedule these sessions to go for 45 minutes. So let me just make sure I got them all. But yeah, okay. So I'm going to stay on for another minute or two in case people have questions. But I just want to remind people the next session in 2 weeks. Let's see. I think this was our last Q&A for this cycle. June 11th, we're going to have Emily Clements come back. She's my friend who was a program officer at CDMRP. And she'll be coming back to talk about that portfolio. She's been great to have on. And on June 25th, I'll be doing a mini tutorial on those rebuttals, the response to reviewers, and showing you how I typically set those up as it's requested as a 2-page thing, but how you could also modify it if they request 1 or 3 pages. And again, this isn't an NIH template, it's just something I use and have made up, and my clients have been successful with it. So hopefully that will be useful to you. Okay, so I think that's it. I don't see any other questions coming in. Shock of shocks. So I thank you all for coming. As the French would say, courage, hang in there. And I wish all of you the best of luck in your upcoming application. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks. A reminder that let's see, we're coming up on First Fridays. So I'll be doing a First Fridays monthly office hours on June 6th. If you're not currently registered for that, you don't get automatically registered for that when you sign into the portal. for your courses. So if you want to be registered for the first Friday's office hours, they're at 11:30 to 12 Eastern on the first Friday of every month. And it's not recorded. There are no mini tutorials or guests. It's just informal drop in, ask questions, leave. I allow people to speak so we can have a conversation about your circumstances. If you want to be registered for that and you haven't been yet, just email me, meg@bouviergrant.com. And otherwise, I hope to see some of you on June 11th, which is our next biweekly live Q&A, to hear Emily Clemens chat about the CDMRP portfolio. So I wish everybody the best of luck. Hang in there, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.